Okay, so in this video, I wanted to run through the costs associated with building this ADU as an owner builder. And I'm going to share this spreadsheet as part of the video series, but I thought I would run through some of these details just to talk through some of the nuance and maybe guide you through my thinking here. And so first of all, on the first page of the spreadsheet, you can see the ADU square footage, 620 square feet, as I ran through in the architectural plans. I've got some notes here. First of all, the breakdown of labor and materials isn't 100% accurate in the spreadsheet. A lot of the subs provided their own materials. Some subs, for example, the electricians, I bought a lot of the materials and they just charged for their time. That was actually a little bit more cost effective for me in some cases, and I was able to control more the quality of the materials that were going into the project. But it made it difficult to split out. I also employed a handyman full-time for almost 7 months during this project. And he did a lot of the small jobs, a lot of the jobs that weren't being picked up by the subs. He also did a lot of the ground prep, for example, the French drains, the digging of trenches, actually framing the foundation and preparing the foundation and doing all the ground prep associated with that. And a lot of the trim carpentry and some other things that I've talked through throughout the project. So, he was definitely worth his weight in gold. He did an awesome job. And frankly, I think he was part of my success here, in that a lot of the subs would come and go and they wouldn't necessarily do a lot of the smaller tasks. And I was able to direct him to do those as the owner builder. It also took a lot of pressure off me having to do a lot of that labor. But of course, as the owner builder, I had to, give him a lot of direction. So, that was a little bit difficult to break out in terms of the labor. Another note here, a lot of the finishes are included in my costs, things like the LCD TV, which is it's actually an LG G3 OLED TV. It's about $2,000. So these kind of things would not typically be included in most GC quotes. So just bear that in mind. I've shared literally everything that's gone into making this place almost habitable, apart from some of the furniture. And so the last thing here is that as an owner builder, these costs don't account for my own time. Of course, that's kind of my sweat equity in the project. And, people say that you save 20-30% by taking on a project as an owner builder if you do it right, if you work efficiently. And so, that isn't factored in here. I'm just sharing the costs I spent personally. I will say I put in a lot of my time to make this happen. And frankly, I think, if I had hired a GC to do this project with some of the intricacies of it and also the level of finishes and just the cost of doing construction here in Oakland and the Berkeley area, I do think that it would have cost me a lot more than this sort of overall project amount, which is $251,487. About $405 per square foot. I think it would have been more in the region of 400, frankly, from a GC, a reputable GC in this area, possibly even more, which is a lot of money. And to be honest, if we were paying that much, I'm not sure if it would have been worth doing, because that is a lot of money. Might be better putting into another property, for example, or buying a larger property. So let's go into these figures here. So if I take out some of the things like the groundwork costs that were related to the main house, I come down to a figure of $239,000, which is about $386 per square foot. I think that's actually a overestimate, because I think a lot more work went into the general improvement of the property, including the service upgrade, those kind of things. Soft costs, so that's my permits, that is special inspections, It's things like the sewer lateral testing at the end and the compliance certificate. All of that came to $23,000. I've got $90,000 in materials, $127,000 in labor. I bought quite a few tools for my handyman and for me to get the job done. And disposal. So this is a lot of the dumpsters that I rented, a total of $5,117, which actually is, I think, pretty good. We had to demolish an entire detached garage here with a concrete foundation, albeit like a pretty poor one, with no rebar, that was pretty thin. But it was a lot of hauling away, including a lot of dirt as well for doing the driveway. And so, here I'm going into a little bit more of the details. Foundation, $13,000, $14,000. Drainage, I think I'm talking about French drains here, but it doesn't factor in a lot of the labor that went into that. Plumbing, $12,000. That includes the sewer lateral work that I had to do. Electrical includes a service upgrade and some minor upgrades to the main house. So $21,000. So that includes an additional meter for the ADU, running that line through the house, the service entry line through the house under the slab to the ADU, and upgrading the service as well. So we've got a 200 amp meter, which used to be 100 amps for the main house. And we've got a 100 amp main meter disconnect at the front of the house for the ADU, and then it runs to the sub panel in the ADU here. Masonry. So this was really the CMU block wall that goes around the ADU on the property lines. That was $8,300. I think that includes the labor. And the CMU blocks, the blocks themselves were, I think, on the order of $2,500. And then you have the rebar and the grout that goes into that wall. And then, it's a lot of labor to put that wall together. So that was $8,300. We've got the framing and siding. So I used a subcontractor for that, and he charged me sort of an all-in-one price, $31,400 for all of the framing, including things like the Simpson strong walls, which were quite expensive, $1,000 for each of those strong walls, and we had 2 of them. That includes the sheathing, it includes the house wrap, and it also included the siding with hardy shingle siding and the trim around the windows. He kept pretty close to his initial quote. There were a few upcharges along the way for things like the skylights, and I think that was really it. There was an issue with the anchor bolts for the strong walls, in that the thread on those wasn't quite tall enough to get the nuts on properly for the strong walls. So he had to use an angle grinder, or his guys had to use an angle grinder to grind the concrete down a little bit to get a little bit more exposed thread. So there was a small upcharge for that, but relatively close to what he quoted. Insulation, we did that ourselves, but $3,500, close to. That was really in the cost of the rock wool, which I bought from Lowe's. Rock wool's a little bit more expensive than the fiberglass options, but for the fireproofing and the soundproofing in particular, that was well worth it, I think. The doors, so these were the bifold door, which I think was about $7,000. The French door, which was $2,500. So yeah, that pretty much adds up to $9,682. But it didn't factor in the labor to install. I had my handyman actually do those, and he did a really good job. Roofing, again, we kind of took that on ourselves. The cost here was really around the materials, so the shingles, the underlayment, the ISOM water shield, and a lot of the flashing. So not too expensive. I think if I'd got a sub to come and do the roof, it would have been $15,000. I got a quote for a metal roof for around 30-something thousand, which was a lot. Bathroom, $7,000. Kitchen, 13,500. That I assume includes cabinets and the countertop, which is a quartzite, a nice countertop. Doesn't include appliances, which are a line item further down. We've got the windows. So these are Anderson 100 series windows from Home Depot in black. Really nice windows, the majority of them here. In fact, all the rectangular windows are 3 by 5 feet. So they let a lot of light in. We also have some skylights. So, all of that came to 4,700. We got the flooring. That was pretty expensive. It's a engineered hardwood parquet. How do you call it? It is a herringbone design. So I think the wood itself from a company called Stuga, I think that was on the order of $5,200 just for all the wood. And then there was the glue and the guys that came and installed it. So that came out to almost 8,000. We've got mechanical. So that's things like the bathroom fan, the kitchen fan, the dryer vent. Not quite sure what went into that, but it is all broken out in the other spreadsheet, in the other tab here. So you can go into that and have a look. HVAC, that's the Daikin mini split. The unit itself was, I think this is the cost of the unit itself actually, plus the line sets, the electrical wire that runs to each of the heads. You can see one up here. And the cost of the concrete pad outside and some of the tools perhaps. I had my plumbers actually install the copper lines that run to each of the heads inside the ADU. Lighting, that seems pretty light, to be honest. I'm not sure where that figure came from, but I'm pretty sure we spent a lot more on lighting than that. Painting, my handyman took that on. That's probably really just the cost of the actual paint, and we used Benjamin Moore, like pretty good quality paint, and we used a airless sprayer. Appliances, tried to get some good deals on these appliances. As I mentioned in some of the videos, the Maytag appliances have been a little bit of a disappointment in terms of the quality, but overall we paid this kind of number. For example, the induction stove I think was $1,400, so that was a big part of it. The washer and the dryer, those are Maytag. Those are probably $700-800 each. And then we got the microwave and the fridge and the dishwasher. Finishing, that's the finished carpentry. We've got some landscaping here. We've got the driveway and patio, so I've done a video on that. And that was a lot of prep work, a lot of sort of excavation, removal of dirt, and bringing in of a lot of crushed material to provide a really good base. We've got some groundwork that was, I believe, for the French drains. This is kind of my general labor category. So a lot of these categories up here will actually be a little bit more if you factor in some of the labor that went into them. But it was really difficult for me to break that out. Permit. So this is a permit from Oakland for the ADU. I also had to get a permit for the sewer lateral. That was a separate permit from Oakland Public Works. I think it was close to 2,000 something, which was a lot for what I thought was a very small job just to tap into the existing sewer line. So that's what we paid in permits. We also had a demolition permit. So all of that adds up. It's actually broken out in one of the tabs under here. We had the survey costs. So this was the survey that went into the plan set. It was also the cost of getting the surveyor back to stake out the foundation and then do a form certification for the foundation. And inspections. So this is our special inspections, and I believe the sewer lateral inspection. I forget what other inspections went into this, but it's a lot for inspections, especially when you're already paying for the permit from Oakland, which includes their inspections. These are additional inspections that you have to pay for as a builder. And then waste, I think this is disposal of some of the waste. I'm not sure the discrepancy between these two figures, but you can probably figure it out from the other tabs here. So if I go into categorized, this is where you'll see a lot more detail around what we did here. So what I've done is I've sort of broken them out with these different labels. So ADU is stuff that's related to the ADU. You'll see some things that were related to the yard, possibly some things that were related to the house. I don't have it in here actually. So that's that. I kind of put things in order as well, so you can sort by this. So A being one of the first things that happened. So actually this is currently sorted by this column here. So you can see all of the planning things that went in. So, the first thing was getting the sewer line scoped and sonded to identify where the sewer line runs and how deep it is, to figure out how we were going to provide adequate slope for the sewer to the ADU. I've got some tools here. This sewer camera was super useful to look at the sewer line before these guys even came in. I also picked up a laser level. This is a really handy tool to understand the topology of your site, to understand the way in which your lot is sloping. And so our lot slopes down towards the back. And so in order to understand the sewer line and the slope that was going to have, or was going to be able to have, you needed to understand the level of the site. And then, of course, when you're putting your forms together for the foundation, you need to make sure the top of that concrete slab is level. And so this is an incredibly useful tool for being able to do that, which is useful to have around the job site. And so then we move on to some of the permit costs. So planning permission, that was really the first step, $503. Had to get the surveyor to come out and do the things that I mentioned, $800, the Title 24, structural engineering. So I actually used someone on Upwork to do my structural engineering. So that actually worked really well. And saying this, these things are not in perfect order, because before the structural engineering came the architectural plans. So I used this guy called Perry on Upwork who did my architectural plans, and that was really the first step in order to get planning permission from Oakland and to start going through the permitting process. But you can see really the big chunk of money for the permit was the building permit from Oakland, and that was $8,400. Had a demolition permit of $1,100. Had to have an asbestos survey. That was a requirement for the demolition permit. And I had to get this Bay Area Air Quality Management J number. So there are lots of these small things that sort of add up. And they're not necessarily providing that much value to your project, but they're just part of the requirements. So then we have Francisco, who was really the guy the handyman doing a lot of the work, the smaller jobs, and he was really fantastic. 7 months. Some more tools here. I got a jackhammer. That was incredibly useful to have on the job site for that demolition, and also to help in trenching and removing some of the concrete from the driveway, as we needed to dig up areas of the sewer line. And for $165, it's kind of a no-brainer to have. The other thing that goes really well with that is having a concrete saw. so you can make nice clean cuts where you want to excavate, and you won't end up with really nasty looking concrete. Even though like all of the concrete ultimately for the old driveway got taken up and redone anyway. But handy tool to have. Dumpsters. We had quite a few dumpsters for the demolition of the original garage. Going into a lot of the details here. So we got this category of demolition. Then we got ground prep. So there were a few tools that I bought here. We put in a new sump pump to drain the water collected by the French drain in the back of the lot and pump it to the street. So that's this sump pump here. Then we're moving on to the foundation. So you can see some of the things that went into that foundation here. We've got a vapor barrier. We've got rebar. We've got a lot of drain rock that was delivered. This company is great, by the way, Rockery. And if you live in the Bay Area, I think they also work in San Diego. But they have a really great app, and you can schedule next day, sometimes even same day, and get 2 tons of rock delivered off the back of a small, a short truck. So really recommend them. Also pretty competitive pricing. Forming lumber. So this lumber we actually ended up reusing for planter beds in the end, which was nice to be able to recycle it. But that was very useful for forming the foundation. And then the concrete itself. So for the foundation of this ADU, because it was a little bit raised off the ground, it was 27 cubic yards, which is a lot of concrete. I think more than you probably expect for a 620 square foot ADU. And we went with a 3,100 PSI mix because the city required 3,000 PSI, and there was a special inspection for that. And so concrete here in the Bay Area is pretty expensive. I think they actually got me a pretty good deal on this, the pumper and the concrete guys I used, Dave Johnson and Mr. Nice Guys. But that's just the cost of doing it. Finishing, Dave Johnson, he had a great crew. He came and did my driveway afterwards as well. So I'd strongly recommend him, and Mr. Nice Guys as well. He did a great job pumping. He was the first one to show up and just kept everything flowing really nicely. So then we move on to underground plumbing. Again, I would say that this list here, if you sort by this column, it's not exactly by order, because of course you want to do the underground plumbing before you pump the concrete. So just keep that in mind. And I've got in one of these tabs, I have a timeline which goes through roughly the steps that I went through. I can't guarantee that it was perfectly sort of aligned with this list here, but roughly that's how we did it. And here are some of the important dates along the way that we went through. So yeah, we have electrical underground and plumbing underground work, and then special inspections that were associated with the foundation. So that's the rebar, the pouring of the concrete itself, and then structural wood that came a little bit later. But overall, we paid Applied Materials Engineering $2,700 for their special inspections. And I'm a little bit annoyed at having to pay this much for additional inspections. I would strongly recommend this company. They did a good job. They showed up on time, which is what you want, and when they were pouring the concrete, the guy actually had some pretty useful suggestions when it was obvious that the last truck was going to be quite delayed. And so, would recommend this company if you need to get special inspections here in Oakland or the Bay Area. So then we're moving on to the masonry. So this was building the CMU block wall around the ADU. And then we got into the framing. So you can see that is the framing there. And then we're getting into the rough-in. So for the plumbing, for the electrical, for the HVAC. Yeah, this is all plumbing, electrical, HVAC, some bathroom things. We've got some disposal, and this one here, for example, this is me trying to save a little bit of money. So here in Oakland, as part of your waste management fees, you get a bulky drop-off, 1 or 2 every year. And so you can actually drive a truck filled with waste that you can dispose of for free. Otherwise, it's a little bit more expensive. So, I used 3 of those, including our neighbors. And then this was the Berkeley transfer station. And so, then we're moving on to things like the windows and the doors. So we've got the Eris bifold, 5,000. We've got the French door. Okay, I was a little bit off with the costs. The French door was more expensive than I thought. We've got the Anderson windows, the skylights. Then we're moving into some of the roofing and the vents. The vents were a little bit hard to figure out as a owner builder who doesn't do this kind of thing all the time. There's a lot of different systems and the different pipe sizes. So, as an owner builder, you have to learn a lot of these systems from scratch. Thankfully, YouTube is an incredible resource for doing that, and online and ChatGPT, but it is a lot to learn. So then we're getting into the insulation, the baffle vents for the vaulted ceiling. Then we've got the drywall here. We've got the painting. I bought an airless sprayer. We did marble tiling in the bathroom. So you can see, as you can see, I've linked to a lot of the actual products that we used. And now, given this was 2024, sorry. And so some of these products may have changed, the prices may have changed. So just keep that in mind. But I've tried to link to a lot of the products that we used. Bathroom, we've got some doors here. We put a Douglas fir clear vertical grain door on the bathroom. Got these shaker style internal doors from Home Depot. This is the herringbone flooring that I was talking about. So $5,251 just for the wood. And I will say that we actually got almost exactly the right amount of wood. At one point I thought we were going to run out, but we were able to use some of the offcuts to finish up some of the borders. And this was the adhesive for that engineered hardwood floor. So we did a glue on, this is an all-in-one, so it's a vapor barrier and a glue all-in-one down onto the concrete. There's a lot of controversy over whether that's a good idea, and frankly I'm a little bit worried about it because I'm not sure the installation was perfect, but it is what it is. So then we got some molding, the installation of the hardwood flooring. We've got our appliances here, the kitchen cabinets. So all the kitchen cabinets came to $5,600 from Sincere. Would definitely recommend them. They were very easy to work with. And if you go in there, you can sit down with one of their advisors. You can design your kitchen. They'll give you a lot, at least Mario at Sincere gave us a lot of really helpful advice on where things should go and the best layout and the best products as well. And we had these pre-assembled, which was a slightly additional charge, but well worth it. And especially because they're just down the road, so it was really easy to pick them up and bring them in. They can do it a lot better and a lot faster than you can, unless that's something that you do. $4,000 in quartzite slabs. So I actually thought we only used one, but we used 2. So these were nice. I've got a slight discount on those, but not cheap by any means. A quartz countertop would have been a much cheaper option. Undermount sink, backsplash, countertop fabrication and installation. These guys did a good job, but they were a little bit difficult to schedule. Got some more appliances here. Vanity. These are all the things for the bathroom. We've got the heat pump water heater, which is a very expensive piece of kit, as you can see. And I'm not super happy with it. It's kind of noisy, but you know, it is what it is, and it was required by the Title 24. We've got some more finished plumbing here. And you know, when it comes to these numbers that you can see for the labor of some of the plumbing, electrical, whatnot, you know, I would take those numbers with a bit of salt. It maybe gives you a ballpark of what you should be paying on in 2024 prices, but I also worked pretty hard to make it a really easy job for these guys. So that may have been reflected in the price a little bit. So just keep that in mind. The HERS inspection, that was one of the soft costs, or the inspection costs that I didn't mention earlier, provided by Edgar, who did my Title 24. He's really great to work with, 100% recommend him. Here we got the TV, which wouldn't typically be included in any kind of quote for an ADU. Let's just keep that in mind. Got finished electrical. We've got things like the louvered door, which hides the heat pump water heater. Sewer lateral permit, you know, again, that was a big cost that I just didn't anticipate. I thought that was included in the Oakland permit cost, the building permit, but turns out it's not, and it's a separate inspection, even though, frankly, I think it's quite a small part of the project, and you know, adds a lot of additional cost. Then we've got, what do we got here? Curtain rods. This is the exterior paint that we used. Really like this color. Again, Benjamin Moore. It's a more expensive paint, but frankly, I think it's worth spending a bit extra on a good quality paint. It'll last longer. It'll be easier to apply. It might require less coats. So I'd recommend that. Then we're getting into some of the Trex decking that we used for the steps outside, low voltage lights, landscaping wire, more Trex things. And now we're getting into the driveway and patio. So really this was the last part of the project, which was to redo the driveway and the back patio, which came up against the ADU, also like a little walkway to the side door of the ADU for the French door you can see here. So this was 21.5 cubic yards of 3,000 PSI concrete. That was $4,700 just for the concrete, not for pumping it, just 3 trucks of concrete. So again, I had to get the pumper out, Mr. Nice Guys, this guy here, and Dave Johnson and his crew of about 5 people doing the finishing on the concrete. It's a lot of work. I have a lot of respect for concrete guys because it's kind of stressful. You're running against the clock. There's a lot of variables in terms of, you know, the concrete that arrives, what sort of consistency it is, and then the weather and how quickly things dry. And so they did a really good job. I would never DIY the finishing of a concrete project unless it was something really, really small. Yeah, we have that. So, and as part of the prep, we had to bring in a lot of base rock, 18 tons of base rock, and we had to haul away a lot of dirt into dumpsters. And one weekend I rented this Tory Dingo, which is like a little mini skid steer loader, to do a lot of that work. and that was a really nice piece of kit. And so, yeah, then we're getting into a little bit more disposal. We're getting into the tail end of things here, thankfully. So landscaping, we ended up redoing the lawn in the backyard. So we got a load of sod from Be Green, great little place in East Oakland for all your landscaping needs. That was $700. Got some topsoil from Rockery. That was kind of expensive actually, but it was delivered. If you get it from Be Green and you pick it up yourself, it's way cheaper, but delivery is kind of worth it in many respects. And then we're getting into the service upgrade here. This was one of the last things that I did. So we have some materials here. I bought the different panels. This one is the combo panel for the main house. So it kind of replaced the old 100 amp panel. This one is for the ADU. So it's kind of a meter disconnect on the front of the house where the service entry comes in, and then it goes out of the back of that and goes all the way to the ADU sub panel. The feeder wire. This is a 1-3 metal coating MC. It's that sort of shielding. Copper cable, 65 feet. So that runs under the flooring of the main house to get all the way back to the ADU. So, wire is kind of expensive, copper's expensive, some additional supplies, and then labor for doing the electrical service upgrade. So it was definitely a full day of work for these guys, and some additional materials as well. PG&E came, they disconnected the old meter and cut the service wire, and then all of the work took place during the day. It took a while because PG&E were kind of late coming out actually, and by the time they were finished and by the time the city had come and given us the green label to say that it was ready to energize, it was already dark. And so PG&E came back that evening and they reconnected things, and that was it. We were kind of running against the clock. So quite a lot of money in terms of labor, but quite a lot of work, to be fair. And there was also a permit, of course, for the service upgrade. So that was $581. And then really the last thing that came in, and this was somewhat of a surprise because I thought we had gotten past this. There was a slight hiccup with the expiry date on our old sewer lateral compliance certificate. Actually came very close to the final inspection of the ADU. And actually, by the time it got signed off for final, that old certificate, which was good for, I believe, 7 years from when we first had the sewer lateral replaced, when we bought the main house, that had expired. And so we got a letter from EB Mud saying we were out of compliance and you need to get your sewer lateral inspected and certified again. Otherwise, we'll get fines. So that was definitely unexpected. I think, if we could have gone back, if we knew that was going to be an issue, it might have been a good idea to have gotten that tested before we did the driveway, because of course, if there is a leak, if there's an issue, you still have to start tearing up that driveway to fix and to find the problem. Thankfully, it passed first time. There were no issues with it. So that was a little bit scary. But, of course, it's another expense as well. You have to get someone out to inspect the line. Pipe Router did a really good job. Julio, 100% recommend him. There's going to be a video on that too. But, he had to come out, inspect the line, and then on a separate day, scheduled with EB Mud, when they were going to come and do the actual inspection, he had to plug up all of the the entry points to the sewer lateral, pressurize it, and then show that it was holding pressure. And so that's part of the inspection. And so, that was another $1,500. But that brings me to the end of all of these costs. If you have any questions about any of this stuff, feel free to drop a line in the comments. I will be happy to sort of go into a little bit more detail if needed. But hopefully this provides something that I haven't seen out there, which is a really detailed overview of the costs that actually go into an ADU. Of course, every ADU is going to be a little bit different. And doing this as an owner builder, you save a lot of costs. You also have a lot of time that you put into it that may not be accounted for in a document like this. And then every owner builder is a little bit different in terms of how much they're willing to take on versus how much they want to sub out. And so, as I mentioned, I had a guy that was doing full-time sort of handyman jobs, filling in between the subcontractors that I used. And then I did do some of the work myself as well. So give us a like, give us a subscribe, and see you in the comments.